Welcome everybody to another Braver Angels vodcast. Today we are excited to present, as you can see on your screen, 5 people of color, and we have various questions to ask of our guests, and we hope you join us and enjoy our spirited 45-minute discussion. And I'm going to ask the guests to introduce themselves. We'll go in alphabetical order by first name, and we'll start with Lisa. Please take up to a minute to introduce yourself, Lisa.
Hi, everyone. I'm Lisa Forbes. I live in the Denver, Colorado area now. I'm originally from Chicago, and I also lived in Atlanta, Georgia for about 10 years. I am the regional co-coordinator of Braver Angels for the state of Colorado, and I am a law firm administrator and a paralegal and a soon-to-be published author.
Thank you very much, Lisa. And then next in line, we have, I love to brag about you, Dr. Marilyn Hosea. Introduce yourself, please.
Oh,
Marilyn.
I just so love that. It was a long journey, so I appreciate that. Thank you. My name is Marilyn Hosea, and I also live in Denver. That's been one of the ironies of meeting Lisa through Zoom. And I am frequently a professor. I say that because COVID has kind of modified my teaching. I teach not online, but in person at Regis Jesuit University. And I also have my own firm that specializes in reflective circles, which are a form of gatherings as well as kind of complex studies. So I'm an organizational behavioralist. That's my discipline. So thank you.
You're welcome. And 2 additional shout outs for her. Nothing like a Jesuit education, number 1. And number 2, you brought to us Autumn Brown for our first Braver Angels of Color podcast. And she was just marvelous. Thank you for that, Dr. Hosea. And next, we have Mr. I love saying that, Mr. Peter Bell. Go ahead, unmute yourself and introduce yourself, Peter.
There we go. Sorry.
There we go.
My name is Peter Bell. I primarily reside in Minneapolis, Minnesota, though at present I'm in Tucson, Arizona. My career has been fairly wide-ranging. I served as a regent at the University of Minnesota. I was a senior executive at TCF Bank, which I currently serve on its board. I was the publisher at the Hazelton Foundation, which is an alcohol and drug treatment operation, was a national alcohol and drug treatment operation. And I was in the cabinet of Governor Tim Pawlenty. I ran what's called the Metropolitan Council, which coordinated all of the transit, land planning, wastewater services for the 7-county metropolitan area.
Thank you, Mr. Bell. Sounds quite a list of accomplishments. And last but not least, Mr. Thomas Reeves Jr., who I affectionately call Pastor. He's not a pastor, but to me he is. He happens to be the blue chair, my co-chair, our co-chair of Braver Angels of Color. And introduce yourself, Thomas.
Thank you, Carlos. I am Thomas Reeves. I live in Annapolis, Maryland. I'm retired now, but I spent 35 years in information technology. I go all the way back to the punch card era, if anybody actually remembers that, and came all the way through. I programmed. I was a mid-level manager, and now I do things like this. I participate in podcasts and help people with various computer-related issues. As Carlos said, I'm the Blue Co-Chair of the Braver Angels of Color Alliance, and I'm also the Blue Co-Chair of the Braver Angels Alliance of Anne Arundel County.
Thank you very much. And our first question is, what is the most challenging aspect about getting people who look like us to participate in Braver Angels. And I'm going to pick on the state coordinator because that's a lot of responsibility, state coordinator of Colorado. So how about you try on that question on precise first, Lisa?
Well, it is a lot of responsibility, actually, but I believe that in this regard, people of color aren't any different from anybody else. We participate in things and do things that we perceive as serving our interests. So the challenge, I think, is for us to correctly determine what does serve our interests. And unfortunately, too many of us have our time and our energy consumed by just meeting our basic physiological economic needs, rent, bills, employment, physical safety. And so when these things are our priority, there's little time or energy left for something like Braver Angels. And so the task is to demonstrate that participation in Braver Angels is going to meet the needs of people of color, and that they see Braver Angels as understanding what those needs are.
Thank you. And one of the things I learned yesterday in talking to Peter Bell, Peter, you've been involved with quite a few groups, and this has been a thing that's been asked of you, and you made it quite clear to me. I don't have any magic bullets, but you do have a lot of experience in this field. How would you answer this question?
Well, Carlos, you're correct. I think that this is a difficult issue that many organizations wrestle with, which is how to increase minority participation in their organization. And I don't think that there's a magic bullet in doing that. And I want to be clear, I have not personally experienced any systemic blocks to minorities participating in Braver Angels. I do think minority participation, and I'm going to agree with Lisa on this point, it is largely based on, do people feel that they are participating in an organization that is going to deliver something that is of interest and meaningful to them? And to that extent, I think Braver Angels can and should, and in many respects is looking to develop programming that might be of more interest to individuals of color. And I think in so doing, it will become a program of attraction where people will come into the program because they are in fact getting something of benefit themselves, and not something of promotion where we have to go out and aggressively promote it, but rather people will find their way to us because it will be of benefit directly to them.
Thank you, Peter. And Marilyn, how would you address the question that was posed?
Well, being last means that I have to say to everyone, I agree, I agree, I agree. And I think that one of the things that I love that expression that Peter just said, and that's the issue of systemic blocks. I think the online platform itself has presented a broader bandwidth of opportunities for people to engage. And so one of the greatest challenges is that where are we on that bandwidth? Where are we located that others can see an opportunity? And I don't think it happens on the bandwidth itself, on the online portion. I think it still happens in the most traditional manners, and that's by word of mouth, that we still trust when someone else gives us a recommendation, And so I think that has been probably a challenge, only because, there's that issue of how I even stumbled into Braver Angels was through a recommendation of a subject matter that I was interested in. And so that was kind of like a hook, and it hooked me in to see what that dialogue and that debate was about. And then I was, totally blown away that there was this opportunity. The second point, though, I think there is also a challenge, and again, I want to echo what Lisa said. This isn't a challenge of just people of color. This is a challenge in general, and that is that we are not a society anymore that's using dialogue very effectively. And that dialogue meaning that we listen and we think about our position and then we engage. And, you know, that seems to be so intuitive, but, you know, I think what I've learned from my students, and I teach graduate students, is that they actually come to a university because they're thirsting for that opportunity. And they don't see that in their employment. They don't see that sometimes in their personal lives. And so, you know, to be able to come into something that's going to demand another kind of critical thinking, as well as expressive, you know, capacity is something different. You know, it's just different. So I think that that's a challenge, is that we have to keep reminding ourselves to have something titillating on that hook that brings people in because of their own personal, you know, desire of being engaged. And then there's that other issue of seeing how after they're hooked into it, what does that take for, you know, it to be a meaningful experience? You know, it's something that they can go away and then share with others, you know, share their experience with others. So thank you.
Thank you for that. And before I ask a question of Thomas, I'm going to ask Mr. Bell to politely just mute his microphone. Thomas, I'm going to ask you the second question. The impact on Braver Angels by having people of color participate. And you're on the ground. You're on the ground both as an Alliance chair and as a Zoom event manager. So love to hear your observations, please, Thomas.
Thank you, Carlos. I believe the biggest challenge is to get persons of color to understand that this is not a waste of their time. Persons of color have been talking for a long time with no real audience outside of their communities. The death of George Floyd and the resulting national conversation has created a new listening audience, but persons of color are tired of talking. In the revived conversations encompassing Black Lives Matter, policing, systemic racism, etc., we have an opportunity to share our personal experiences and worldviews to a new listening audience. True, this by itself will not result in any systemic change, but it has the potential to enlighten an audience who do not understand the issues surrounding our communities, and it may reduce the resistance to social change.
Thank you. And I'm going to transition now to Lisa. This group came to be as a task force. Once, I think about 16 of us met, and we each voiced our individual needs. Lisa, what was it about this theme of this task force that drew you to it?
Well, I think that if you want people to know what you think, you have to tell them. And so I liked the idea of there being a recognition of whose voices this is. This is for people of color. And so, you know, I think that if you don't show up for any conversations, you can't be upset when people who were there misrepresent your view. Right? If you want people to know where you stand, you need to be at the table when the conversations are being had. And I agree with Thomas that, you know, we are tired of talking, but I think that what I enjoy about Braver Angels is it gives us skills for maybe talking differently. Skills for conflict resolution, rather than, you know, the battling and the yelling and the screaming that we are really all tired of. We're tired of being discussed, but not being part of the conversation. So I enjoyed the challenge and the opportunity that Braver Angels of Color represents, in that Braver Angels is a well-established, well-structured, well-moderated organization. So the things that people reject about organizations like this after a while sometimes, where you're just talking into a vacuum and no one is listening. Braver Angels is set up so that you are heard, and then to be heard specifically for who you are. Don't tell me you're colorblind, because if you're say you're colorblind, you're still not seeing me. I am a person of color. So see me as a braver angel of color. And that gives me a reason to think maybe it's not worth a waste of my time.
Thank you, Lisa. I'm going to transition now to Peter. Go ahead and unmute yourself. Peter, I'll restate the question. What impact does the participation of persons of color have in our organization? What's been your experience?
Well, actually, I'm not sure. I think that much of that is yet to be seen. The reason why I have been interested in participating is I think Braver Angels provides a legitimate platform for people across the political spectrum to dialogue with each other on important issues of the day in a way where that's somewhat safe. And I enjoy that opportunity to do that, particularly with other individuals of color. I have said that our advisory board really has had two primary functions. One is to bring other people of color into the fold, so to speak, into Braver Angels to consider the organization and its mission and goals and to see if that was right for them. But the second goal is really to provide a safe space where people can dialogue with each other on some very difficult, very painful issues, and dialogue in a manner that is civil, but also has a breadth of participation. And that second goal is the one that I am particularly interested in and have largely enjoyed those type of dialogues. Both the other podcasts that have been done, I have enjoyed listening to those, but even the discussions that I have participated in, I have found people are bright and informed, balanced, interested in listening to other people, and very interested in being heard. And I think through the provision of that type of opportunity, we will be that program of attraction where other people will say, you know, I want to do that too. And that is how we will build it a brick at a time.
I like that analogy of brick at a time. And Dr. Hosea, how about you share your observation on the question of impact?
Well, one of the things that I just value so much, and after the task force that you referred to, Carlos, we broke into those subcommittees. And in the subcommittee, you know, we were small enough to have some very personal and rich conversations, and they were authentic. They were authentic in the meaning that I think the discovery that we could be comfortable with listening to ourselves, having a broad spectrum of beliefs and a broad spectrum of experience, and that we were not homogeneous, that we really did bring to the table, you know, the kind of goal I think that we're trying to set. And that is that as we can bring more people in, I think we're going to start to realize the depth and the breadth of experiences in these groups. You know, I oftentimes, I am a fourth generation Coloradan, okay? And oftentimes the first thing that comes up is, I didn't know there were Black folks in Colorado. And so, you know, there's that discovery issue that oftentimes people, you know, don't, by our geographic, you know, setting, realize that, you know, there are these kind of experiences and that we are different and we can still belong in the same tribes with the same kind of feeling of affection and appreciation, because we do recognize our differences as well as our similarities.
Thank you for that. I'm going to now flip over to Thomas. Thomas, you and I have the benefit of talking several times during the week. So how has being involved with our organization impacted you personally?
Well, we as people of color give a voice to questions like, what do people of color want? I don't have that problem, why do you? What events in history have stalled the progress of people of color? And also, our physical presence and participation shows our interest in giving a voice to subjects relevant to us as well as to the broader community.
And I'm not going to ask anyone, but raise your hands. Please share a story of how our organization has impacted you personally. Just go ahead and raise your hand. Oh, go ahead, Marilyn.
Well, you mentioned it at the very beginning. I had a wonderful opportunity that was a challenge. Carlos asked, do I know of someone who would like to participate in, it was a podcast. And it really made me think about my network. And out of the network, I found Autumn Brown. And it was such a delightful experience to, number one, meet somebody online that I didn't know, but also feel very comfortable that this was going to be a forum that they would enjoy and appreciate. So I think, you know, it goes back to my era of civil engagement about each one teach one. And she taught me a lot. When I actually listened to the podcast, I was so appreciative of what I learned about her.
Peter, please. Go ahead and mute yourself, Peter.
One thing I would say, while I view our work as having two primary goals, one is to bring more people into the fold, as I mentioned, and the second is to provide services for each other. And that, quite candidly, I'm more interested in the second than the first. I do want to speak to the first. I think Braver Angels, to be a legitimate organization, it has to broadly, not exactly, but broadly reflect the country. And people of color are part of the country. And while I agree wholeheartedly with Marilyn's point that we are not a homogeneic group, African Americans are not homogeneic, people of color aren't homogeneic, we are very diverse, nor do I view my racial identity as my exclusive. It might be my primary personal identifying characteristic, but it's not my exclusive personal identifying characteristic. I'm middle class, I'm middle-aged, you know, I'm a Timberwolves fan. I've got a lot of things that define me. But I think Braver Angels has a responsibility to broadly, but not exactly, reach out and make sure that it has representation from all sectors of society in order to be legitimate. I would say the same, the police forces have that, businesses have that, academia has that. And it's not that I believe that we bring a Black or Hispanic or Asian point of view, because I don't represent anybody but myself. But I think just to be a legitimate entity, it has to do that. And so I support that. In terms of what I have personally gotten out of it, it has been the dialogue with many people that are on this screen today. I have very much enjoyed dialoguing with people, sharing with people. And I think Marilyn said it, I have been pleasantly surprised at how candid and authentic and intimate those discussions have been. And so I look, that's what keeps me coming back, is those type of discussions.
Thank you, Peter. And Lisa, how has this impacted you personally?
Well, I believe in issues, not in sides, you know, not in parties. So I have been politically active in a lot of different organizations. And what I have found in many of them is that there is, first of all, a presumption of which side I'm on as soon as they see my skin color. And and then a lack of the structure in discussions that sometimes leads to differences of opinions not being productive, not ending in understanding, or or even just respect for a person's right to have a different opinion from what you think they ought to, or for what from what you do. And so, Braver Angels, I enjoy, as Peter said, I enjoy the depth and the breadth of the conversations that the structures, that the moderators in our conversations and in our debates and in our workshops offers. It's set up in such a way that you can be heard, you can be respected, there is no yelling, and yet the intention is always to understand. I'm not here to try to change people's opinions, but I also don't think that your opinion can be changed if you won't even listen to me, if you won't even consider that maybe I am something other than deplorable, you know, So I am often not as liberal as people tend to presume I am when I walk into the room. And I don't want to be stereotyped by your presumptions of me. I want you to hear me. And Braver Angels is a format and gives us the tools in the workshops to speak in a way that can be heard, and also equally important to learn to listen when other people are speaking. Listen not for what you disagree with, but maybe listen for where we can find some common ground.
I like that. And the following is not on the script. So here we are, 5 Braver Angels, and we'll see if we can come up to the standard that the organization has set for us and we have set for ourselves. Let's pick an issue. Let's pick an issue and have a discussion around it. Then the follow-up question will be what reservations we have about our own organization. And that's part of the Blue-Red workshop, Blood-Blue workshop. What reservations does one have about their own side? So Thomas, pick an issue that it could be germane to people of color, doesn't have to be, and at least germane to the country. What topic would you have us bat around here a little bit?
Well, I just want to preface that by saying that, you know, when people are in a discussion, they bring their own worldview with them. And I think that they quite often falsely assume that the people they're talking to have a similar worldview. They don't take into consideration that persons of color, because of differences in culture and experience, might carry a very different worldview. And unless you listen to what we have to say, you won't know what that worldview is. And you will continue assuming it's like yours, and you won't understand where we're coming from, so to speak, or what it is we're saying. So
I can relate to that. My name with the accent is Carlos Rafael Hernandez. That's a tip-off. I live in San Francisco. I live in California. Both are known to be sanctuaries. And I'm not a blue. In fact, I was a blue and I left. I defected 4 years ago, and folks will assume that I'm a blue. And one time, like on this suit, I was at a party and it's a pin of the American flag. And when I left, the person I came with said, "They think you're Republican." I said, "What? Why?" "Because you wear the flag on your lapel." Talk about presumptions. Here in the Bay Area of San Francisco, that was a really big tell. So who would like to go ahead, Peter, please.
I'll give you an issue, and I think this is an overriding issue that has 1,000 tales to it. And it is an issue that has a political dimension to it as well as a cultural dimension to it. And it's an overriding one for me and an unresolved one for me. But that is, to what extent is the lack of progress in the African American community based on internal dynamics that only we in, not just African American, but we in communities of color need to resolve? And to what extent are problems in communities of color externally based that the broader community needs to address by removing a whole host of impediments. I think that manifests itself in 1,001 different ways. I think, for instance, President Biden, one of his major challenges is going to be to address the civil unrest in many parts of our country in a way that is sensitive to social justice issues. I have no idea how he is going to do both of those, because clearly there is rising crime in many of our cities. Right, that rising crime is disproportionately committed by people of color. 50% of all violent crimes are committed by African Americans. And yet there is deep concern about social justice and social equity issues. That's one of the tails of that question. And I think it finds itself in 1,001 different questions. I have enjoyed the discussions that we have all had around that, because we all have a different take on it. We all emphasize different points of it. And I find all of the points as sensitive, well thought out, intelligent, balanced, and very much enjoy that. I think that is a question that white America needs to address. And that is a question that communities of color need to address. And I want to be clear, I have opinions on it, but I do not have answers regarding it.
Thank you for that. And I saw your head there, nodding, Marilyn. Do you wish to have, what issues top of mind for you?
Well, I'll just say to Peter, we just need to have more discussions and then he'll have the answer. Well, you know, my hook when I first was introduced to Braver Angels was with a very specific subject, and it was reparations. And that is a very sensitive issue. And it's something that all people of color who have come to the United States in some fashion have had some experience. And I think what ties me into the interest as well as this platform is that we find ourselves, you know, at a kind of crossroad with, as Peter was saying, a new administration coming in with a variety of issues that have priority. This pandemic, you know, has a priority. And yet we still have, you know, communities that are struggling with that lack of resolution of some of the ills and some of the hurt and some of the misfortunes that have beset a community because of either systemic racism or other kinds of you know, institutional behaviors. So I think that was a subject that when I first listened, you know, to the debate, you know, I was a participant, and it made me want to just, you know, jump into the stream with my opinion. But you know, having to sit back and listen was an important aspect of me understanding how this platform really works. So I think that's just a general topic that it drew me in, and it still is something I'm interested in.
Thank you for that, Marilyn. And we'll now turn. Oh, I see Thomas's hand raised, but I want to get to Lisa. Lisa, what issue is top of mind for you for us to tackle?
Well, similar to what Peter was saying, I want people of color to ask, I want us to ask ourselves, A, what is the problem? What is the problem not? Because that is a big question. What is the problem not? Is the problem really what you think it is? What is the problem not? And then who is responsible for solving that problem? Is the federal government responsible for solving that problem? Are state governments responsible? Is it a community problem? Or is this a problem that can only be solved by individual personal responsibility? You know, there are many levels on which the variety of problems we face have to be solved. And if you turn to the wrong level for the solution, that explains why you have the problem continuously. You cannot be, the federal government is designed to do certain things, and it is not designed to do other things. And when you depend on the federal government for things that it is not designed to do, you will not get your problem solved. Anything that lies in the purview of your personal responsibility, never expect the government to solve that problem. So
Lisa,
I want us to ask ourselves those questions.
I hear you, and before I call on Thomas, I won't say it in Spanish. I'll say it in English. When I was a little boy, growing up in the Mission District, my mom would say to us, "We set ourselves back." And we were little, 10 and 12. And the point she made to us, we're not going to follow that paradigm. And the variable is education. Now, I only have one college degree, albeit from Stanford. My brother has 5, including Stanford. And our parents emphasized over and over again education and to pay for it ourselves. I wanted to go to a private high school. She said, fine, pay half your tuition. I did. Stanford University came around. Carlos, how are you going to pay for it? That's what she said to me. And I arranged for scholarships to pay half, and I worked to pay the other half off. Before graduation, I left with 0 debt. So our mom wanted us to make that kind of have that personal stake. So.
Well, I'll say very quickly, my parents, much like yours, focused like a razor blade on education, but they didn't say we had to pay for it all. So I want to be clear on that. They were okay with scholarships.
Thank you. And Thomas, you had your hand raised a little earlier. Go ahead, Thomas.
I did. I want to share a personal story to kind of bring my point home. At the time, my 12-year-old niece had been born and raised in Cabrini Green. And for those of you who are not familiar with Cabrini Green, it was probably one of the most notorious Black ghettos in Chicago. And one day at the age of 12, she was in a 2-bedroom apartment with probably 8 or 10 people. Most of the time she slept on the floor. And that was her life. Cabrini Green was her life. That was the example that was being set for her. Well, one day at the age of 12, she packed some stuff in her little backpack and walked halfway across Chicago to her aunt's house, who was an attorney and doing quite well for herself. She showed up and her aunt took her in, and with a lot of effort, she went to high school, graduated, went on to Pitt, University of Pittsburgh, on a volleyball scholarship. Yes, black women playing volleyball. That's right. That was her scholarship, as her aunt had done. And then now she graduated from Pitt, and she's doing quite well for herself down in Atlanta. She's probably a low-level manager right now. And I think that speaks to a need to show our people sometimes there's a better way. If you were born and raised in Cabrini Green, that may be all you know. You don't know that there's an aunt on the other side of town that can show you another way. And so I'm thinking perhaps mentorship programs, adults mentoring young adults, mentoring children, to show them that there's another way other than what they might see on a day-to-day basis. And education. Dr. Marilyn, you talked about reparations. What I'm hoping will happen one day is that we can unbundle property taxes and local money to fund schools. That's one of the reasons we have poor schools, because, property taxes, local taxes are not high enough to pay for a better education. So we get what our communities can pay for. And so if we can unbundle that and subsidize education in our communities, plus show our young people a different way through mentorship, I think that will go a long way to helping us help ourselves.
Thank you. Thank you. And Marilyn, please, I see your hand raised.
Well, the reason is that I think this is the way in which we talk when we have our group together. And that is, we share these stories. And yesterday was a really kind of a milestone for me. It was, in the news, they brought up Chuck Yeager's passing. And that triggered me because my father was a Tuskegee Airman, and he went on in the service and was actually a part of Chuck Yeager's kind of flying community. He was a mock buster, and he did a lot in terms of his career. And they both passed on the same day. So that was the reason that it triggered me. But what I wanted to share was that, one of the things that my dad passed on, there are only two of us in my family. I have an older brother, and both of us have PhDs. And that was not something that was just by, accident. It was, again, my dad had these 6 things that we had to rehearse. One is aim high, believe in yourself, use your brain, never quit, be ready to go, expect to win. And those were the chants that the Tuskegee Airmen would actually march to, during their training. And the reason why I bring this up is that the issue of reparations to me is about what my dad told me about the double victory. That when World War II was happening, the double victory was not just about them fighting for World War II. It was coming home and being able to be reintroduced into society being equal. And of course, that did not happen. And so I think when we have these dialogues and discussions, we need to appreciate sometimes the other part of the education, Thomas, that you so delightfully bringing. And that was that, many of us who had parents that experienced that so deeply landed up with, like my mother, making us go to school on Saturday to learn our history. She didn't believe that someone else was going to tell us that. And so she got her little women's group together and made us go to school on Saturday so that we would learn those kinds of experiences and that kind of history. And so I think I value, a Braver Angel about giving us this opportunity to have these stories told, so that we don't get aligned to that. No, it isn't, just the government that is responsible, but the government has an obligation in many capacities. Okay, so I firmly believe that part of it. But we do have these other kinds of ways that we can share. How can we have, as Peter was saying, solutions? Yes.
Thank you for that. And Thomas, go ahead, please.
Well, I just got finished talking about my niece. Let me talk about me. My father was a World War II veteran, and he was one of the first Black officers to graduate from the Air Force Officers Candidate School. Now, you can only imagine a Black man in the military in 1954. My father didn't talk very much, but I can only imagine the trials and tribulations that he went through. And this was in an era that if you were a Black man, your options were relatively limited. You could teach, you could work on the railroad, or you could go in the military. And through his choice, we had an opportunity to see a much different world than we might have had we been stuck in West Virginia, which is where I was born. So, we managed to escape that and, gave me quite a different worldview than I might ordinarily have had. So in some respects, my father was my mentor. He sort of set the example that we all, chose to chase.
Well, thank you for that. I like this theme of personal stories, and I'm going to pick on Mr. Bell. You've had a list of accomplishments. You must have come across obstacles. How did you learn to navigate them?
You know, that's a very good question. As I was listening to Marilyn and Thomas talk about their parents, and I was thinking about not my parents' story, but my story. And you know, and to what extent race has been an impediment to me, racism, and where has race been an advantage for me? And I am constantly analyzing that question, because it is not an easy one for me. I can give a number of examples where whites have cheered me on, encouraged me, helped me, celebrated in whatever successes I've had. And while I've never had anyone say, you know, no black people allowed, or you can't come in here, I don't deny that those things did not happen in my parents' time and my grandparents' time to a significant detriment of their dreams. That has never happened to me. But I think that there have been subtle ways in which, particularly when you are being considered for the top position of something. I think, you know, I'm maybe getting too nuanced, but the second or third position, that's okay. But if you're the top position for it, then I start wondering, but it's only wondering, is race an issue? And I think that's a dilemma for people of color across the board. And I don't think we are ever clear on when race assists us, because I'm clear that it has, and no white people have ever said, Peter, you got this job or you got this position because you're an African American and we want to feel better about ourselves or better about our organization. But I'm sure that's happened. And I'm also pretty convinced that race has worked against me in some cases. And one of the paradoxes of my life and one of the painful aspects of my life is I am never sure which is going on. I suspect often that one or the other is going on slightly, but I never can be sure. And that's awkward and painful, and a burden that I carry. But I don't think I carry it alone, because I firmly believe that the four of you on this podcast have experienced exactly what I am expressing, exactly that. And that's one of the things that I look for Braver Angels to do, is to provide a platform where these things can be discussed openly and honestly.
Thank you for that, Peter. And I'm noticing that Lisa had her hand raised. Please, Ms. Forbes.
So I am super impressed with everybody's stories, and I want to give the flip side of that coin in also support of Thomas's talking about mentorship, because there's a wonderful set of people who had that experience with parents, and then there are people like me who have had to parent themselves. It is very close to my heart that trauma resolution in the Black community. There is an inordinate amount of generational trauma that has been unresolved, and then continuing personal daily trauma in our lives, whether it's in our homes, whether it's in our childhood, whether it's in going to sleep hearing gunshots, whether it's the trauma of hearing stories of things like George Floyd, racism. You know, we experience an inordinate amount of trauma that does not get resolved. And traumatized people make different decisions than people who are not traumatized. So a lot of our traumatizing decisions are being made because that's all a traumatized mind can come up with. And so it is really close to my heart to deal with trauma and trauma resolution in our communities. I have definitely had to reparent myself. I had a very traumatic childhood. My mother was a part of a religion that believed the world was going to end any second now. And so you don't need worldly education. And so I graduated from high school at 15, and she saw no no value in putting me in college. So, you know, those were things that I had to resolve myself. So those of you and who have had those experiences are great mentors for the flip side of that coin, who, you know, your niece Thomas was able to walk across across Chicago. I'm very familiar with Cabrini Green. I'm from Chicago, but if I had the awareness to do that, I probably would have, but I was too traumatized to do that. I also grew up in the Chicago housing projects. And so, you know, it's been a long journey for me to reparent myself. Our community also needs to see the set of people who have successfully done that just because you didn't grow up with those values doesn't mean your future is set. You can reparent yourself. Those of us who have done it can be your mentors, can reach out to you. And so our community just has a lot of needs that, again, government does have a role, but I don't think it's going to play that role. But I do think that we need leaders on all levels of government who understand that if you don't deal with trauma, you can't make good decisions. And so that is an issue that's close to my heart.
I feel empathy, and I'm seeing Dr. Hosea is nodding her head. 2 thumbs up. Doctor, you want to add a comment to hers?
Yeah, you know, again, that shows our diversity of experiences and our diversity of not only trauma, but stress. You know, one of the things that I'm finding right now in this pandemic kind of atmosphere is that there's a lot of trauma and stress related to overachievement sometimes, you know, and that over expectation of, you know, again, tapping into resources and tapping into, you know, things that, you know, we want to spread ourselves so thin because we want to be those mentors to so many kinds of situations and people. And so I think, again, this platform is where we have these wonderful dialogues. We have these discussions to share, you know, what did it mean for us? Lisa, can not only understand what you're saying, I, again, I graduated very young also and started college very, very young with a lot of, no, I wouldn't call it baggage, but expectations that were put on me that I was not old enough to handle. And so I think, you know, what I found is that, you know, through my own life experience, that those kinds of they're not traumatic necessarily, but they're stressors, and that they cause sometimes behaviors. You know, I got married too young. I had children too young. And so, you know, those are some things that, you know, when I talk to others about, you know, having these fabulous parents, you know, that was not on their expectation list, you know, and again, it caused me to grow up a little bit differently. Yeah, but I so appreciate what you're saying. Yes. In California, by the way, Carlos.
I appreciate the personal stories. We're going to be bringing this to a close. And while I speak, think of 2 or 3 sentences you want to leave our audience with as we say goodbye to them. And I'll speak first so you guys can think of what you want to say. I'm ever so grateful to my parents, and they're both gone. They probably stayed in the marriage too long. And I think they did it for us in retrospect. So I thank them for that. And yeah, Emilia and Rafael Hernandez, may they rest in peace. Amen. And we'll go, Peter. We'll go in order of Peter, Marilyn, Thomas, and then Lisa. Go ahead, Peter.
Well, I guess I would say to those that are listening to this podcast, that if you have heard something today that piques your interest, the discussion that we have had, I think, is emblematic of the discussions that at least I want to be a part of with Braver Angels. Not only exploring issues of race and racial identity and the like, but also a wide range of political issues. I think that that is healthy and helpful and healing for our country, which is what I think it really is in desperate need of at this time.
Thank you, Peter. Marilyn?
Okay, I all of a sudden, oh, it's me. You know, one of the things that I think I would encourage people to understand from, again, you know, this experience that you have witnessed is that it involves courage. It involves courage, you know, to be authentic, to look at this as a safe space. I mean, that was one of the words that we used to name, you know, our subgroup, is how do we create safe space so that people can be vulnerable, you know, exchange situations, exchange, you know, experiences with the feeling that there's going to be an uplift of all of us. There's no, you know, value driven on it. It's just going to be our way of understanding each other better. So.
Thank you. And we'll go to Thomas and then Lisa. Go ahead, Thomas.
We are the people that you don't see on the evening news. And we're not the only ones. There are a lot of us out there. Come and hear what we have to say.
Wow. Thank you so much. Lisa?
I would say that you don't have to have answers. What we need is your authentic voice. And who you are is enough to make a good contribution to finding the answer. So come and give us your voice.
Thank you for that. And I want to make sure that I state heartfelt gratitude to the four of you. You can find us at www.braverangels.org. We're also on the YouTube channel, the Braver Angels channel. And come with your curiosity. I think you'll hang around for a while. And with that, I want to give my salutations to Dr. Hosea, Ms. Forbes, Mr. Bell, and Pastor Reeves. Good day and good night from San Francisco, Maryland, Arizona, Colorado, and Maryland. Where are you hanging out these days?
I'm sorry, my dog just said it was over. So
Okay.
I missed what you said.
Okay. Good night, everybody. Take care.